good. How's everybody else?
Excellent. So you guys all know each other, correct?
Actually, Dan, I don't know if you and I have formally met.
Well, Dan, like to meet Craig Dr. Craig we were just talking about it. Craig has his doctorate in engineering. You did electrical engineering?
Electrical and computer.
And Lisa actually has her doctorate as well, PhD in computer science.
Hey, Lisa.
And what's your doctorate in, Dan? Did I get that right, or I mess up tonight?
There's a bar in downtown Troy. It's called Sutter's. I had a doctorate at Sutter's.
And Tony, Tony, we have this thing at Transfinder called Transfinder University. So
Yeah.
Tony's the chancellor, and so he has an honorary doctorate from Transfinder University.
Good. I'm with Tony. I like that.
I don't know why I haven't done that. I think
That's
tomorrow
all right.
someone.
I think we'll work that out. Anyway, I want to thank you all so much, really, for joining us. I thought about this a little while ago, and just how do I, number one, reconnect with all the people who have presented in the past at the BizLab Clarkson lunches, and then I just thought, you guys really are leaders, and why not? This would be a perfect time just to tap in and hear what you're doing to lead your companies through tough times. I know, Dan, you just went through a change actually with you're working at a new company now. So just for starters, I just want to start more on a personal level. How is everybody doing during this time? Have you been impacted at all? I mean, in terms of knowing somebody, on how everyone's health, I hope, is okay. And we'll just start from there. I'll just start with Lisa, go to Dan, Craig, and Tony. Just how are you doing?
Sure. This year actually has been incredibly tough for me. I started in January by losing my dad, and then had some time in February to bring my mom and tour assisted living facilities up here and down in Georgia where my sister lives. We got her settled into one at the end of February, and by mid-March it was on lockdown. So it's been quite scary, and we have all the things that go along with losing somebody. We have a house to pack up and sell, but we only got partway through that before lockdown on travel happened. So we're sort of in limbo trying to get through all of that. It's sort of extending the time of having to deal with it all.
Yeah.
And combined with the pandemic, I can't tell if my feelings of dread are from what's happened personally, what's happening in the world, what's happening business-wise. So it's been a very emotional time for me.
I can't imagine it. Plus, you're leading a company.
Yeah, right. Just trying to get through all of that.
Wow. Well, we'll come back to that, because I'm sure there's also a lot of empathy that you can have for employees. And, I believe firmly that nothing is wasted, and whatever we go through can be useful in how you, work with others. So we'll come back to that. Dan.
Allergies.
Yeah, I think Lisa makes a good point. I think for us, it's, there's things have changed for sure. My wife and I, we have, elderly parents that we need to keep an eye on. And from that perspective, things are, they're worrisome, right? Troublesome, because you want to see them, but at the same time, you can't see them. You need to be, safe and careful. So that's definitely been, tough, necessary, but, tough. And, we also went from having 0 kids at home. We made it to empty nesters, and now we have 5 kids home. Yeah. So, we've got college and work happening from home. Actually 6 kids home. I'm home now. So I think my wife is the one that had the biggest change, because she went from being able to rule the roost with the 2 dogs, and now there's 6 other people there. So definitely, different for sure. But, we were, I think fortunate relative to a lot of situations. So
did you have to buy an extra router or something to kind of handle all the people hopping on the internet, or? You know
what? Listen, I'm not asking. It's working. So I'm not looking to solve a problem that we haven't encountered yet. So it's all been good.
That was a question for Craig. I think Craig was wanting to know that, so I thought I'd ask before Craig did.
We can help.
All right.
Craig, how about you? How's life for you right now?
Well, it's frenetic, I guess, is the best way to describe it. One more on the personal note, I have 3 daughters. One's in San Francisco, one's in Houston, and one's in Barcelona. And as you know, Barcelona has been particularly hit, over there. And everybody's doing well. They're all working from home and they're all healthy, but you're constantly on edge waiting for that next day when you find out that that's a problem. And what concerns me the most is, especially my daughter in Barcelona, if anything happened there, I couldn't even get over there. Or if anything happened here, she couldn't get over here. So it's this huge feeling of isolation and constantly on the edge going, is today the day we get some news and all I can do is sit here and not be able to do anything about it.
Are they staying? I know that you have just like their dad, very active kids. Are they actually abiding by the stay home kind of orders?
They are, which, like their dad, is driving them absolutely crazy. So they're torturing their dog. They're doing things like that. So it's hard. No matter what your housing conditions are, they could be a mansion and you still just need to get out once in a while. Yeah. Especially my kids that, they're very active.
Yep, absolutely.
But couple that with, very long hours right now. And it's a little crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally relate. We'll get into that for sure. Tony, how about you? How's home life here for you?
Home is a lot very different. I'm such a person that I got to be around people. That's how I get ideas. I get inspired. I get the energy from people for not being around. I mean, listen, I love my wife. I love my son. But that was a big change. And really just to be able to sit in front of my computer, I feel like I was back in, like 10 years ago when I was coding and it was nonstop. But I didn't think I was able to do it. But I tell you, I got focused. And, but yeah, my mom I lost my father. So at least I understand that. I lost my father 8 years ago, and my mom took good care of him. Then as soon as he passed away, she starts falling apart. Had a knee replacement, hip replacement. She had a whole aorta valve replaced last summer. So yeah, we're really worried. But she's like this. She wants to get out. It's like, what do you got to go for? Well, so she went to Walmart last week. It's like she had to go. First time, she got the mask on, the gloves on. She comes back because now, I haven't gone anywhere for 8 weeks. She hasn't gone anywhere, so we're all staying home. And she lives like a couple doors down. We actually just walked down the street here. She comes home. She comes to my house. Like, I'm never going out anymore. I was so scared when someone was in the aisle. I didn't want to go down that aisle because there was people there. Then, of course, when I'm in the aisle, people see me. They don't want to come down. It's like, I'm so scared. I don't want to go anymore. Like, well, don't go then. Yeah. So yeah, life is.
It's so surreal. It is very surreal.
Scary. And honestly, the only way I tell other people, the only way I can maybe be able to cope is that we put these long hours, days blends right into the night, and you almost forget about what's real world about. Because we're doing these kind of meetings, and obviously we're seeing people like ourselves, right? Everything's okay. We don't see the world falling apart. And it's almost like I love these meetings now because I escape reality. You know that? I'm sure you guys feel the same way.
Yeah, definitely. I'm getting very used to these. I think we're going to see a lot more of these even when normalcy returns. We'll probably still see people hopping on Zoom calls, and it's not going to be a big deal. So I want to talk a little bit about the challenges you've had at your companies, and then we'll talk about how you adapted to them. But maybe just setting the table, and anybody can kind of jump in. And what challenges have you had as a result of the coronavirus, crisis? Anybody can jump in. Dan, you're shaking your head. You want to jump in first?
I mean, for me, I started as, CEO at aptihealth right at the beginning of April in the second quarter. And, aptihealth's a behavioral health company, and we've got a telehealth delivery model. So 100% of our providers work from home, and they always have. So, from that perspective, we're fortunate to be ahead of the game. We don't have our providers. We have no offices, nationwide.
Oh, wow, okay.
At the same time, we have a management team that works out of Boston and Troy, but we haven't been in either of those offices in a couple of months now. So we've learned how to Zoom exceptionally well. And the interesting thing, I think, has been that, the number of hours in the day seems to have increased substantially because there's no more commute. There's no good and bad. There's no water cooler. There's no, good and bad. A friend or a colleague wants to go to lunch. Everything seems to be really intensified around focusing on the business and working together. So I think that part of it has been, interesting in many ways. But for us, it's been, overall, it's working better than not.
We've tried to, you can't make people do this, but we've tried to encourage people having lunch together over those, we use Teams at work.
Yeah.
Just to, just get together, not to talk business, but okay. Anybody else want to jump in just what the challenges you've had as a result of being remote?
Well, I was actually going to mention it because I'm managing two different companies right now. There's STEADfast, the IT support, network support company, and we provide most of our support remotely anyway. So that company was pretty well set up. A few rough edges we had to go through, and everybody could work from home as easily as they could work in the office.
What kind of rough edges, real quick, before you move on? What kind of rough edges were there?
Oh, there's a lot of collaboration that happens, a lot of interaction that you're not even aware how significant that is to how well you can work. And we lost that when everybody went home. So we had to put different things in place. And we use Teams as well. That helps, but it only goes so far. We're doing some other things that I can talk about a little later. But
okay, I just wanted to go ahead
and get it to the next step.
Yep.
But FMT was tough. FMT is a 24/7 healthcare call center. And now we have social distancing and people who didn't want to come in. So to get people working from home, when they're in the office, I've got redundant phones, redundant phone lines, redundant internet, redundant power. When they go home, I lose all that. Plus, I had to get their phones to work from home and their, everything to get in place. And then complicate that with when they're home, we still have to be HIPAA compliant. So they had to prove to me they had a room that they could close the door. All these kinds of things. And we just had to jump on it. That was tough. And then add to that especially settled down a little bit now, but when all this originally hit, our schedules were out the door. I mean, it was our normal schedules of when we expect volume to come in and stuff like that. You were going along and all of a sudden some kid gets reported as positive. And we have, 30 some phone lines. We're usually using like 4 or 5. Within 15 minutes, every one of them was pegged. And you can't predict when that's going to happen. So we have to put in surge capacity that's always there just in case. And it's been nuts. That was tough.
Are you increasing hiring? Do you need more? Are you getting, because of volume?
We are.
So,
yeah.
So you're one of those ones that are actually hiring in the midst of this.
Yeah, between the two companies, and this is from not even just the increased workload, but from opportunities that have come to us. We're going to be hiring 25 people in the next 90 days.
Wow.
So that's a challenge.
Absolutely.
Especially when you have to do it all remotely.
Yeah.
Right.
That's been one of our challenges as well. Kitware was also well suited for working remotely. We are geographically dispersed already with offices in multiple locations. So we're used to using Google Meet as our platform. So most meetings are in multiple locations. It's usually multiple conference rooms and 1 or 2 remote people. It's actually worked a little better, I would say, with everybody being remote because everybody's on a level playing field, when it used to be that the people who are all together in a conference room would start a conversation and nobody else could get into it. But now everybody has to play, nicely.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's worked out pretty well. Our communication has been great. But things like, we're also actively growing. We have a backlog of work and a lot of positions we're hiring for. And so it was early March when we saw this coming and we said, all right, we need to do a practice work from home day. But we kind of delayed until March 13th because we're like, we have all these interviews and we don't know what to do with the interviews yet. So we're trying to make plans for how we're going to do interviews remotely. And so we're like, all right, March 13th, Friday, we don't have any interviews. We'll do that practice work from home. And then by Monday, we knew we had to shut everything down because we had employees in some of our offices reporting that they may actually have COVID. they never actually got tested, and so we don't know, but we're like, okay, everybody stay home, nobody come back to the office, we're all, stay home, stay safe.
Was Friday the 13th your last day in the office then?
Some people can't. Well, Friday the 13th was our test work from home day, and it went really well. Monday, some people started coming back in, but we also got some people saying, hey, I'm sick and I think I might have this. And so that's the day we told everybody, don't come back in again, head home, work from home from now on, until further notice. We didn't realize how long that was going to be. But we quickly had to figure out how we're going to do these remote interviews. How are we going to remotely onboard employees? Because usually they come into an office, they sign the paperwork. There's things that you have to do for E-Verify and I-9s, and how are you going to handle all those things without being able to physically see something? And the rules were not yet really out there to work from. We have a whole bunch of summer interns. That's our best way of hiring employees in the future. We don't want to give that up, but none of them can travel to our areas, so we suddenly have to rush and register in a whole bunch more states to do business so that they can stay in whatever state they're in and work for us. So there's been a lot of learning processes. The good thing is we'll come out of this with stronger processes and procedures than we went into it. But it's been a scramble.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did some of the states kind of loosen some of their requirements for the compliance there? Or
I don't think so.
Tony, how about you? Any challenges, Transfinder?
Definitely been some challenges. Well, Friday the 13th, Friday 13th was the day that I walk in the door. We're leaving. We're going to be remote company. And at the 440 State Street office, it took us about 4 hours to get everyone out the door. We had a little box. We had a process. And listen, it was a little scary when everybody left the door. I was a little bit worried that night. I remember how I had this, a little bit sad feeling. I told all the managers, I met with them first, saying, guys, this is where you get paid now. This is where you got to do your job. Everyone do your job. And my job is to make sure we stay alive. We're a company still, 3 months from now, whatever this is going to happen. Who knows what's going to be, right? And they left, and everyone had this beautiful box. It was, I'm talking about everything, HDMI cable. It was a checkbox. It was a process. 4 hours, we got about 80 people at the door in 4 hours. So I was proud. I remember just seeing people around 2:30 leaving the door. I'm like, wow, that's the last person leaving. Of course, the last people that actually did all the check-in and make sure they were there, and we're like, just saying, wow, this is a memorable day. It's going to be amazing. I remember the president was on. We had him on a 15-foot screen. We had him, just because I think it was around 4 o'clock or 3:30 at that point. They declared, the merge. Like, wow, I think we did the right thing. And it was just scary, just a scary part. But I tell you, on Monday morning, everyone's back on. And, I think, Lisa, what you're saying about and especially in development, a lot of people could work from home. How many times we would actually have a meeting and get everyone together, well, where's Bob at? Well, yeah, Bob's working from home today. Like, all right, let's get Bob on. So literally it'll be like this, there was this hesitation, like, all right, does Bob know we're meeting? Well, you guys called the meeting 10 minutes ago. I'm not sure if Bob could get onto his computer. Like, well, he's working from home, right? So it means he should be in front of his computer. Oh, man. Oh, yeah. Well, Bob must be walking the dog right now. It's like, boy, literally it was such and again, I'm just saying Bob, right? It was so hard before. But now, boom, meeting in 5 minutes, everyone is on.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to call a meeting now because they're all right there. And honestly, I feel like we have some of these beautiful huddle rooms and conference room. Listen, they're still needed when we go back. But wow, we need a 5-minute call. Stay at your desk. Let's do a meeting right now. Holy cow, I think it's so efficient. And I feel like you say like, wow, having a meeting and I don't see somebody on the phone seems strange. But clearly, this is such an efficient way to meet. And we are blessed. We work with schools, of course, initially crushed us. Schools is closed. There's no routing software necessary, but now it's changed. The economy is going to be affected based on how fast these schools open. So it becomes a critical time. We're actually schools, how fast and how well they do with school openings and how well they prepare affects the economy.
So
holy cow. So that's changed a lot for us. So we are hiring and we're having I feel like we're going to have a record quarter if things continue at this pace. But obviously, anything's can happen, right, guys? Anything happening at any moment.
Right.
So, yeah, big changes.
So is there anything that, and did anybody jump in, that, leading a company that is not a remote company, or at least the bulk of the company isn't remote, and then all of a sudden you go remote overnight, basically, different types of skill sets, where, you have different approaches to things. So I'm just curious, how your leadership style has changed, how you personally have adapted to the environment, and then maybe even just a little bit about, what things have you tried that have worked, and what things maybe you try to say, yeah, that one didn't work, and you pivot, you move on to something else. But, how have you changed in terms of your leadership style? And really anybody. Lisa, looks like you want to jump in first.
Yeah, I would say that first off, this isn't a normal sort of remote. I mean, we had something in place for when people were working remote, and we had our rules, make sure you're working with no distractions and you can truly focus on your work and those sorts of things. But we've had to be much more flexible with this because people are at home with their young kids and there's no childcare and there's no school. And so if you're taking a meeting with a toddler in your lap, or you have to get up because somebody woke up from their nap early, or whatever happens, we have to be flexible and adapt to that, because our employees are amazing and they're getting their work done, but they also have their lives as well. And this is not an ideal situation for anybody. So this is not normal work from home.
Right. I mean, we still have, we've had webinars actually where one of my panelists might have, like, you hear this big loud dog barking in the background. And I think I think people have grace, realize it's like you said, I mean, it's not the normal. So,
but I'm actually thankful for that, because I think it's humanized everybody a lot more.
Yeah.
I mean, we're on Zoom meetings, they're locked up right now, but every half hour, my dogs come up here and make sure I'm okay. And they become the star. People want to see them, not me. And it's just, it adds a whole dimension. Like before, work and home were distinct. I mean, not for us so much, because work always seems to follow us home. But for most employees, I go to work and then I'm home. And this has merged it, I think, in a lot of positive ways. People look forward to being distracted by a dog or things like that.
Yeah. Well, I actually like the aspect of being able to see people's homes,
Yeah.
And, some people have these nice big windows in their backdrop, and they want to show off like their yard, and it's actually kind of, I get to see them in their own, home.
Yeah.
So that's a good point, Greg. Anybody else?
Well, one thing I was going to mention that I know I'm doing a lot more of is I'm over communicating with everybody, because when you're in isolation, it's just the nature of the human mind. If there's a lack of information, the human mind will fill it in.
That's exactly right.
And not always with the way you want it to get filled in. So we have an all hands meeting every Thursday, during lunch, and we just talk through everything that's going on. Really trying to highlight the positives that are going on. 4:30 tomorrow, we're having an online happy hour. Things like this to just over communicate, really point out the good things that are happening, but not just that, just really go into what everything's happening, because you can't forget that people are isolated. And when they're isolated, they will start, and it's not even intentional, but they'll start filling in their own information, and it may not be what you want in there.
Absolutely. Tony, I know you got some thoughts on over communicating.
Over communicate, I got to tell you, I completely agree. And by the way, I would have these, maybe quarterly big parties, and once a year, all this we've been doing the past year. Maybe this would be like 3-4 hours at a time. I normally have the Transfinder State of the Union address in the first week or second week of January. And guys, it's a marathon. I'm out there doing like almost this year. I think I had 175 PowerPoint screen, literally go into the product. It was over 4.5 hours, just marathon, right? And by the way, how to keep those people engaged for that long, I don't even know how I did it this year. But now I realize I can't believe how much I'm doing. I'm actually sending out an email every single day. I mean, I've not missed a day. And usually around midnight, and I talk about what happened today. But I'm talking about what happened in service. I asked all the managers, like, you go get some success stories because I want to include them in my nightly. Really, it's a nightly update. And yes, we do these gathering. We'll have one tomorrow at 4:40 p.m. And we just 440 is our address, so we're using 440 as our magic. And tomorrow we're going to be celebrating Mother's Day. I mean, I think tonight there's trivia nights going on pretty soon here. I mean, we've become such a closer company that we ever were. I'm actually, it's still.
So in some ways, we're actually closer. We know each other better than we did.
We really
before.
are. I think it's I feel like we are more, I mean, when we hear the dog bark, we laugh, right? And I think my dog's thinking, what the hell happened? I used to be all relaxed during the day. Now I hear all these noises. So he's like, I feel like he's more tired now than before because it's like, man, you guys are bothering me here, you know? So
He wonders when you're going to go back to
When's
the
Tony going back to work?
he's confused, right?
Tony's got to get out of here.
I think communication is 100% the key, and over communicate is actually the word. Just keep talking. And by the way, it's got to be positive stuff. And as being a leader, you got to have real good news. And by the way, there's days you better go find some good news and ask him, I need to send good news. So by a certain time, send it to me. So and that's been a challenge, but good news, we've had good news every day. So yeah, a lot of work. So yeah, for sure.
I think, Rick, from hearing everybody, I actually think that we're like in the first chapter of a double-digit chapter book about what all this means, because I think everybody's points are spot on in the degree of change. I mean, I was a little bit fortunate in that I had a step down to the lockdown where, on New Year's Eve, I walked out of infrastructure where I had been for, over 10 years. I had built a, really big facility in Banan. We had almost 1,000 people there. It was like, it had a convenience store, a game room, a movie theater, everything in there, right? And I did it because I had historically been like a firm believer that physical presence in getting keeping everybody together and doing the things that everybody is talking about in person was central to culture. But the interesting, and by the way, I used to be a total, totally opposed of working from home. I couldn't stand working from home because of like what Tony said, where's Rick, where's Craig, where's Lisa? You're trying to get people together. And I have to say now, I think I've done pretty much a 180 because, with working from home, Zoom is working extremely well for us. Attendance is probably at least 10%, maybe 20% higher. No time wasted commuting. Way better than I thought. But I'm actually finding in that sort of the first chapter of the multi-chapter book, I wouldn't be able to make trivia night tonight with Tony because I'm too tired from going from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom from 7 in the morning till 6 at night. I'm ready to crash.
Yeah. That's the part that I think some people still, I mean, you guys are all executives, you're used to that, but I think some people may feel like there's a little bit of that work-home balance maybe a little bit out of whack. Do you have to adjust for that a little bit when you're thinking about dealing with employees and saying, okay, maybe I'm still at my computer, so they probably still are too, so I can email them at 8 o'clock and expect a quick answer. Do you have to kind of readjust a little bit?
Yeah. I think you're going to see, Rick, on that whole topic we're talking about, I really do think you're going to see a lot of, companies form that are focused on exactly this. I mean, you see Microsoft, with all the, money they're dropping into Teams and the what they're doing in their advertising, they really are in like a right spot at the right time to drive consumption of that capability home. But I think you're going to see more and more, and I think you're going to see the VCs plow a lot of capital into how, with all these changes, they're going to plow money into writing chapters 2 through 12. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, this is not going to be just when the pandemic has wound down, everything goes back to normal. it's going to hit many businesses. After some period of time of people working remotely, they're rethinking their philosophy on remote work. For us, we typically tried to have people in offices with the feeling that there is better synergies, there is better collaboration in the office than you can get with people spread out. But now we're forced to be spread out, possibly for a long time period, and we're learning how to adapt to it. And maybe it's something that we continue to do in the future. So that's going to be interesting.
And maybe like some industries may lend themselves more than others. I mean, Tony and I were talking earlier about the story that was in the Business Review, and Karthik and Guha Bala, that in some ways there was some of that collaborative, that you do need to be together, that it has hurt some of that collaborative, experience.
Yeah, we do it through Google Chat, though. I mean, people just pop up, hey, do you have a minute? And then they start a chat and pop up the camera and start talking. So
it'll seem more normal than you're just saying.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be that didn't happen. We said that it could happen when you're at home, but usually if everybody's at work and one person's at home, you didn't bother the person at home.
Right.
You just went and talked to the people that were at work, so that person got sort of excluded a little bit more. But now that everybody is separated, we all have to do this. So you start the chat and you say, hey, you have a minute, and then you start up a video chat and start talking to the person.
Maybe the workday isn't at 8 to 5. It could be still 8 hours a day, but it may not be necessarily contiguous hours. Craig, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to mention, and we've seen a lot, because we work with a lot of companies to work out of the office and all that. And a mistake that a lot of them make is, how do I work remotely? And that's not the question to ask. The question is, how do I work so that location doesn't matter? So whether I'm at home or I'm sitting at my desk in the office, I'm working the same way. And what you find is it forces a lot of efficiencies. I mean, between my laptop, when I leave at night with my briefcase, I could drive anywhere and work as effectively the next day. That could be at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and I could still work well.
And you have been at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, haven't you?
Yeah, several times actually. But so the point is, and a lot of companies are now, how do I work remotely? And it's how do I change the way I work so that location doesn't matter?
I love that. That's a great rephrasing. Tony, you've had like Dan mentioned, a turnaround. You were pretty much one of the most, if you don't mind me saying this, I think you were probably one of the biggest opponents to remote working. Am I not correct? Would that be
I got to tell you, I did a 180. And I tell you, I've done such a 180 right now that I went back to the office. Listen, you guys have been to my office. I spent a lot of money to make that building look as it is. And by the way, I was on a pretty big meeting yesterday. It was about the immigration laws, but we started talking about what does that mean for this area, and I tell you, I've completely changed my mind, because it's not remote anymore. I actually don't even use the word remote, because I tell you, there's some people earned to work home and some people were not doing it. If it snowed, well, the people that worked for so many years could work from home, and then the person that's brand new had to burn a day for vacation. That was such an unfair. I got to tell you, that was what burned me up, because it was such an unfair seniority. Well, it's a person who's been around for so many years, or a senior person. They could just show up when they want. Meanwhile, the person is probably working more than anyone else, has to take vacation because there's a snowstorm out there. That's what would bother me right now, honestly. And I think I want to make sure I say it correctly, that there's people out there. We've been really held back as a company on the people we could hire in this region. Listen, we're all trying to fight for the same person. You're all hiring the same computer science major person. And there's only so many in this area. Guess what? Whoever figures out how to go get them anywhere. And by the way, you don't need to come to Skevington anymore. Hire them. And by the way, Mark Egan was on this webinar yesterday. And of course, they don't want to hear that. It's like, whoa, I don't want you to do that. But listen, there's people that used to live in New York City, have a great salary, move up here. Because you could have a great salary and work right here. You could work in this area. And by the way, I would say this all the time, that my son, when he, another 15 years or so, he's going to work for a company that doesn't even, it's not even an American company. He'll be someplace in the United States and work some international company. 25% of these kids that are now in grade schools will work for a global company that's not even right here. We said that. But I said 15 years ago, I've changed my mind. It will happen within a couple of years. Within a couple of years, we're going to have a workforce that's going to be global. Why not? Why can I work for a company that's in France? Or vice versa? Why can we have an employee that's right now? So this whole, it's not even remote. It's just, hey, just how it's going to be. This whole office, it's done, guys. In my point of view, it's an efficient way of doing it. Well, we're fortunate. We're a technology company. But we have all the metrics. We know how many calls you made. We know how many proposals you sent out. We know everything. So therefore, go ahead. If you choose to not do it, at the end of the day, it's a science, guys. If you didn't get the project done by a certain date, then you didn't get it done. And what I like about it, there'll be somebody in Nebraska that probably wants to get that job. Stay in Nebraska. We love you. So, wow, guys. I'm 180 also. I'm with you guys, 180.
And answered the question on why we're not doing that around the world. It's tough enough to do it throughout the United States with different rules in every state. I can't imagine trying to do it with understanding the laws of every country.
Honestly, you're right about that. I don't really know those things. I'm not thinking about the rules, the rules and regs. I'm thinking, hey, you're an employee. We give you a certain task. Get it done. And if you don't want to get it done, there'll be another billion other people I could choose from. I got to tell you, I think this area could get really big because wouldn't it be nice if we have people that live here but maybe don't work right here? There's nothing wrong with that. To me, I thought, oh, we got to all work in the same place. Why? Why not? I mean,
I know I had friends that used to, one I remember worked at Cisco, and he was making a Silicon Valley salary, and he was living in Greenfield Center, I think, and he's like, I got the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And that was rare, I bet. I bet it's rare. I think that's going to become common. Think about it. You guys all could have employees right now.
You're gonna say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, the one point I'd like to add to that, though, and I think we're still trying to figure it out a bit right now, is getting the work done, absolutely. But how do you create a cohesive company culture when everybody's scattered all over the country? That's all formed by the water cooler talks, or in our case, the kegulator costs, conversations. It happens in the office right now. And Zoom meetings are great. You can get a little bit, but how do you develop the culture through those social interactions that aren't happening as well right now? And that's the next step. If we can figure that out, then this is speed ahead.
And I'd say we don't consider our employees to be sort of interchangeable parts where if one isn't working, we can just hire another one. We make a commitment to our employees. They're there with us for the long haul. We have really good tenure from folks, and we want to keep that. And we're a little bit worried about hiring people completely remotely and having them work on something. And when the project ends, instead of sticking through it and moving on to the next project, they find the next job. So we don't want to see that sort of culture start.
Right. Which, I think that's one of the things like, just like people who are like day traders, or people who flip homes, there's no commitment to the neighborhood. They buy the house, they sell it, and then they move on. Is that approach going to happen in the workplace as well? Like you said, project oriented.
I tell you, so I have a company in Shanghai, and now we're starting one in Hyderabad. Well, in Shanghai, they're a contract. So this is really a contract. So you don't just hire somebody. I mean, you have a year contract, which means you really can't just say, we can still say if it didn't work out, they can still leave, but there's an obligation. I mean, obviously we have to change some stuff because, at least I agree with you. You can't just have somebody all of a sudden you're done and all of a sudden they're moving around and they're in their living room and they're getting a different job every other month. Well, that's got to change, right? We have to have some sort of a policy because my culture could be awesome, but culture is great. At a certain point, I don't even see those people. That extra 10 grand in my pocket makes a big difference. And at this point, how other countries are doing it, they're figuring out, listen, I'm going to make a commitment with you. You got to commit with me. And let's have a contract. And I think that's it. Those are just simple policy changes that a contract does work. Why not have a contract, right?
Yeah.
I know, there's a benefit of having employment at will, but why not have a contract? Listen, if I'm willing to commit somebody, well, then I'm ready to give a commitment. And if I made a mistake, my bad, right? And I think there's got to be something in that because, guys, there could be people all over the country, all over the world. There's got to be some sort of a legal contract here. So I am asking for some changes in regs. Again, I think it's when you met Lisa. I don't know about those things. It's something I've never had to deal with, but now I want to know more.
Craig, look like you had something to say, and then I want to ask you something, Dan. Craig, did you have something?
No, it was more along the same lines of the culture. The culture is really formed by, the social interactions. And the biggest thing for me, and we're going through this right now because we've got some rather large changes, as I said, 25 people here coming up. There are times a startup company or a young company is successful because of the team that you have in place. Okay, because when you bring in that outlier that really shocks the system, you got to depend on your team to say we can do this, and they figure out how to get it done, and you move on, and that's what does it. And if everybody's remote, and then that opportunity comes in, that's when you may find out I don't really have the team I thought I would. Everybody's just 9 to 5, and that's what I committed to. That's not, a large company can work better that way. A small company can't. You'll die in the vine with that.
Right, you're right.
Dan, I was thinking about, because I know you're new at the company, but your company is basically remote. And so we talked a little bit about like trivia night and, happy hour. And those are good things. But like, how do you keep like true morale? Because, like, that's not enough, right, to make people stay with you. Those are nice add-ons. How do you keep morale up in this environment? And I guess the other question that you guys can all be thinking about is, what concerns do you still have? I mean, if this plays out another month or two, are there some concerns you have, like what we're doing now may be working, but 2 months out, we're going to have to adjust our game plan a little bit. But for starters, Dan, just morale. How do you keep morale up and remotely?
Yeah, before I answer that one, I'll answer it. I think everything we just heard are like, they're the chapters in the book, right? From 1 to 12, what everybody talked about, because each of those, there's big, there's depth to those answers. I mean, so we talked about doing a 180. I did, and then Tony did, and then Craig said, well, what about the water cooler and the camaraderie? And it reminded me, which I wasn't thinking about, when we built the infrastructure office in Malta, at Global Foundries, it was because we were there since they started building the fab. And we had a bar in that office. And people would come and they would say, you have a bar in the office? And I would just laugh and say, you know what? Every, Wednesday, Thursday, sometimes it was a Monday, we'd sit there with the folks that were building Global Foundries, and we would talk about, what was happening, the good, the bad, the ugly, and we would figure out how to solve problems together. And what I said is, we probably, in all seriousness, we probably signed, I don't know, $100 million in contracts sitting around that table at the bar, right? Just working together, and it all worked. It was great. So I think those are the chapters, that are going to end up being written here, because we're still early again. Like I think we're in chapter 1, maybe even the preface. We didn't even get to the chapter, but I would say.
We don't have a title yet.
Yeah, we don't have a title yet, right.
Dan,
So
I want you to share, what exactly were you serving at that bar that got you $100 million?
Well, that's a big fab, Craig. They spent it's $100 million out of like $25 billion probably. Yeah. So, and I don't think you would like the margins there. That Tom Caulfield's a tough negotiator, so it's all good. But I think, Rick, on the morale thing, I think that step one, like in morale, is, great people building great culture. Now, one of the things we've been fortunate with at aptihealth is I know all of the executives and I know all of the board members. And it was, so we had the benefit of having put that together pre, lockdown. So I think that's important. And then, for us, it's always been, we built a very clear, profile for people that will be successful at aptihealth. It's something we've carried from, infrastructure. We carried it over to aptihealth. So a really, really clear definition of, the qualities we need in a teammate for them to be successful, right? To be fair to everybody. So I think that, in doing that and having those values that, encourage and attract people that like to work together and share those values, that's important for morale. And then I'll tell you, winning is great for morale. I hate to say it, but because right now this economy is really, it's like there's two sides to what's happening. We all have friends that are in businesses that are getting decimated right now. And I mean, we sit here in a healthcare business that's focused on behavioral health delivered through telehealth, two of the hottest things in the world right now. Whether you're in Asia, you're in Europe, you're in North America, right? It's front and center. So we're really busy right now. So I think all those things, have people really excited to work together. The thing that concerns me on the remote front, like Craig's point around the water cooler, is, we had a really successful, raise in, in last year. We got to go out and raise money again in the third quarter. And I'm really right now thinking through how is the venture capital ecosystem and process going to work when the historical way of doing things is not happening anymore, right? So that's going to be interesting. That's the one thing right now that I really have my eye on. How is that going to change probably for the couple strategic VCs that we really need to scale, as fast as we can. So I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that's good. Very good points. Anybody else on morale?
One of the things I found, we keep pairing people up in different teams. We have different things need to get done. And, in what we're doing, it's very collaborative. The downside of a very collaborative environment is people become dependent on it. And so one of the things I'm noticing now, which is a really good thing, is people are becoming more self-reliant. And they reach out when they need help. They still have to learn when they need to reach out. Sometimes they pound on a problem far too long, longer than they should. But I'm finding people are becoming much more self-reliant because of it. And I think that's
So there's a value in the buddy system, but there's also that can be a downside as well.
As with anything, there are pros and cons to any. A highly collaborative environment is people can't function without it.
It's almost like, that job interview they would ask, and they would say, "Are you collaborative?" Yes. Oh, so you can't work? You're not an independent worker? Well, yeah. Okay. I can do both. We had a call today with one of the sales guys was on this team call and had a pretty rough stretch, and you could hear it in his voice. He'd come out of it. He's rocking it again. And Tony made a point of just highlighting him and saying, I was worried about you, but you're on the other side. I hear it. And so there's a little bit of a buddy system they have in sales where they do certain things. But then there's also, he even said, he goes, you're going to have days like that, but you got to just, as, my gosh, Mark Catini used to say in his, I won't do the British accent because I'll butcher it, but he'd always say, you got to grit it out. And sometimes you just got to grit it out. Lisa, you look like you were going to say something as well about morale, and then I'll go to Tony.
Sure. Yeah, I was going to say, morale and culture are closely tied together. For us, I think it comes back to reminding people why they come to work at Kitware, what we're doing, what the difference we're making in the world. And it's actually a little easier sometimes even now because we have some projects related to COVID-19, that we can talk about and say, hey, we're extending our physiology engine to handle 2 patients on 1 ventilator and what happens then. So we're doing our part to try to make a difference in this, and that helps people feel like they're part of the solution. So that really helps, and I think that also comes back to the helping keep people, longevity of our employees. And I have to maybe disagree a little bit. I'm not sure a contract is the way to do it. And that's, similar to the way we do our software too. It's open source. We're not making anybody make any commitment to it. They don't have to pay us license fees. They're not tied to us. We don't really tie our employees to us with a contract. We want them to be there because they see value in what we're doing. They have the same reason for coming to work as we do. And that we're all, have the same mission and are working together towards that. And I think having that helps us keep the morale of everybody high.
Yeah, definitely the idea of framing things with the idea that what you do is purposeful. We definitely talk about that at Transfinder. At the end of the day, what we do is make school bus routes as safe as possible to get kids to and from school or from home safely. I mean, you can't get a greater, that to me is definitely a great calling. And that's the people that we serve. You can see it in like from the bus drivers to the routers to the supervisors. Tony, your thoughts on morale and keeping morale up?
I think the most important thing, it's something that started with a Times Union blog. It's called Tone at the Top. And I really believe as a leader, that's my job. That is my job. I have a lot of jobs at the company, but one of my job is to keep the morale high and make sure that we communicate at the high level. Lisa, it's important that, like you said, we want to keep every employee here, and we got to get them engaged, and we should recognize when they're not engaged anymore. Something happened, right? So something happened there. So therefore, that's what my job is to make sure that there's a mission, and that's why we hired them. That's why they chose us. It really is this. We have a contract right now. We really do have a contract. It's nothing on paper, but it's a mutual respect contract, and I love that. It's a beautiful thing. And today we are feeding, our clients are feeding 30 million students a day. Do you know that all these kids going to school? Well, 30 million of them are required. They went to school, yes, to get educated, but they were getting fed. 30 million kids a day. So that's our mission. So all of a sudden, we're not just, writing some software and it's cool things. It's nice. It's cute to get kids on a bus. And, they get to safe to school and, but now our clients are going and deliver food at their house. They're doing these parades to recognize, hey, we miss you. They're using our software to build these routes. They're using our software to put lawn signs in front of the seniors. That's how they're using. They're not just saying, hey, let's just drive around. They're using our software to do all this. And wow, people are just like, holy cow. And of course, that's my job, is to make sure this is what we do, guys. And by the way, I never did it at this level. I did, every few months, and maybe I'll like, oh, good, we just got a big deal. Let's just all go upstairs and celebrate on a terrace. Now it's a daily thing, and that's my job.
That's good. And actually, Tony sent out a happy birthday to someone the other day. Whenever we have a birthday, he'll send out an email, and you had his name wrong, and I'm highlighting it because you wanted to correct it. Some people would say, oh, just let it go, hope nobody notices, but I actually really appreciate it. You go, Dave, I want to wish you a double happy birthday. You highlighted the fact that, I thought that was kind of cool.
That's my job. I think morale, and it really is the same thing, right? It's the same thing, and I believe
you're the chief cheerleader. I think all of you are.
Something. If I'm down and I'm all negative, then don't expect people around me going to be any happier, right? My father used to say about the little rooster and the big rooster, and there's a whole proverb around that. So it's my job to keep morale and mission high level. It is my job, and to make sure that.
Well, tell us the rooster, because now you can't just tease it and now say it. So what's the rooster?
Well, my father would say, when the little rooster crows, the big one has already sung. On a farm, you have the dominant rooster that goes out, in the morning and crows. Then all the little ones, right? They follow the leader. Well, when the little rooster crows, means the big one has already made its thing. So when you hear an employee being a little negative, guess what? They didn't make that up. They heard it from one of your managers. So they're the little rooster. So get a hold of that, because morale is not just your new employee, it's your existing employee, and most likely the most deadly thing if it's one of your managers. Imagine that, one of your managers hurting your mission. Get a hold of that, and you got to fix that, because the little rooster is the easy fix. That's not the problem. They heard it from if a kid, a 15-year-old kid or 10-year-old kid says something about politics, like that kid doesn't know anything about politics. Guess what? They heard it from mom and dad. The little rooster. I live by that one, guys. And
So-
that's part of what my job is, right?
That's great. That's awesome. And it's true. One question, and then I wanted, so the one final kind of question in terms of if this thing does prolong, are there still some concerns you have? You may have already addressed, not everybody has to answer, just answer if you want to. What concerns and adjustments will you think you may have to make so we can put a positive spin on that? And then lastly, I'll go around the horn with just what one takeaway that anybody who, those who are watching this, you want to make sure they get. I can think of several, but just one takeaway that you want to make sure that is embedded in this. So just concerns if this thing plays out longer than just, June 1st. Anybody want to start that? And how will you adapt to it? Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, we're set up right now where this could go another year or two and we'd be okay.
Okay.
Because it's just the way we're going. We made the adjustments. We still have tweaking along the way to go, but I'm not concerned about that. What I'm concerned about is that you can't plan, forward. There's such huge changes that happen so quickly. And not to get political, but I always wake up one morning going, I'm one tweet away from my world changing. And how do you adapt to that? It's tiring always being on that edge. I mean,
I think it's intentional, by the way, by him.
We're doing fine. Things are going just fine, but I could wake up tomorrow and we're at war with the Chinese for all I know.
So that's the hard part is
that gets tiring.
Yeah. Yep. Others.
I'm concerned about, friends and colleagues that are in industries that are really, really adversely impacted by what's happening. That I think is top of mind for me because it's hard. It's hard when, you're in a business that, for whatever the reasons, is insulated or actually may even be growing because of what's happened. And really it's not because of, better decisions. It purely is like circumstantial right now. And I think candidly, Rick, I think it's part of life, but it's actually a really unfair part of life right now. So I'm worried about those people, the hospitality people, the restaurant people. We all have friends there, people in the hotel business, all that stuff.
Right? I think about what would it have been like for you if you were still at infrastructure? If you still had that, I mean, how much of a change you probably wouldn't be as relaxed as you are right now. Yeah,
true. But true. I mean, it's so that's the part that's I'm still thinking through right now. What's exactly going to happen?
That's a good
help those people.
That's a good reminder to be empathetic. Really. Lisa, anything?
Yeah, I agree with both of those. I think first off, we feel like we're in a bit of a pause right now. Even though everything's going fine for the business and we're hiring and everything's great, you feel like it's not really the time to be making future plans, and many of them are on hold. We're, working on expanding our offices down in North Carolina, and obviously we're not sure what space needs we'll have in 2 years now. 2 years seems like a really far place in the future, not because we're expecting any problems with the business, but maybe our people are going to be in different locations or working remotely, and we just don't know what things are going to look like 2 years from now, so it's not the time to be making those plans. And then I do worry about the impact. Our employees have been doing an amazing job keeping up with the work, and we're operating full steam ahead with everybody working remotely, but I know that for many of our employees that is a heroic effort for them, as they have 2, 3, 4 kids at home, and they're trying to homeschool them and get their work done. And if this continues into the fall, is that going to keep working, or is that going to cause them too much stress? So there's some worry there that when is this going to settle down to something sustainable.
Yes. Yeah. My daughter's always asking, my daughter's 23, and actually both my kids are gainfully employed, and they also have been somewhat insulated, working no problem. One works for PR, one works for one works for Baker Public Relations, and the other works for oh my goodness, I just lost the name. Brian Epstein's company. Somebody help me.
Oh, Deep Blue.
Deep
Deep
Blue.
Blue. I'll have to edit that part out. Deep Blue Communications. And they're both crazy busy, you know. So I feel blessed, but I also know that they also have friends, and I have friends as well who have also been let go. I know people who have lost their jobs. So I definitely, Tony always is telling our company many, 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 many times how blessed we are to be in this space we are in. Tony, anything you want to talk about regarding concerns? And then I'll just go around the horn for just one takeaway.
I think the concern is health. I tell you, honestly, it's health. I'm worried about that. Somehow, is this going to get better? It's going to get worse. I'm worried about that. I think at a certain point, I think as Transfinder is concerned, we actually going to be fine at this moment, the way we're operating. I think we work things out. I know we're at chapter 1. I think we'll figure it out what happens in chapter 2. But overall, there's things we can't control. And yeah, politics, I think we have maybe a little bit control about politics. But guess what? Health, I don't have control. And that's something that is the biggest concern. We really should, as a world here, this could be a couple of years, and not because it's going to affect our business. What about really people get sick, and what's going to happen to? I think that is something that I was almost ready, right, guys? About a month ago, we heard I was going to be 1 million Americans were going to die, and man, that was going to be scary. Listen, a lot of people have died, but millions, I don't know if anyone could have been okay with that, because that means all of us somehow would have been, all of us deeply impacted. When you have that many people sick and die, there's no way we could have a cohesive company that you have 50 employees if all of them have someone very close to them pass away, or even one of your employees. Guys, that has got to be a concern of ours. If it really gets horrible, how can that not impact even our business, even though it's, we happen to be the right time, the right place. But if it happens really close to us, or one of us, we get sick, I'm really concerned about the health part, guys. I do, because is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? That's the unknown. Because if we're all in that category, I'm guessing, right? And I'm worried about that. And it means, could we? I don't want to lose a family member because of this, or a friend. That means there's no way we could just focus at our job anymore at that point. We're going to be deeply impacted, which means at that point, what will happen to morale? How do you keep that going? So I got to tell you, that's my concern.
No, that's real. That's very real.
It's really weird. I can't control that, Tom. I can't control it. I think I'm doing my part by not talking to people. But I just saw yesterday that a significant amount of people that went to the hospital were staying home. I think you saw that. Even our governor was shocked when he was saying, I don't know why he couldn't explain it, why the numbers were so, right? You guys know this. And I'm trying like, holy cow, I've been home the whole time. Where am I getting it from? The Ethernet cable here, right, Dan?
Yeah, I hear you.
We have this. Yeah, my wife is an RN. She doesn't practice in the hospital anymore, but she's always been very germ focused. So now if I go grocery shopping or whatever, I just leave it all on the back porch and say, you deal with it, because I'm not going to handle it to your level of, quality that I need. Like, she sprays everything down, and 3 days and whatever. So it is definitely a new process in all of this. Final takeaways. Who wants to? We'll just go all around. Hopefully all of you can share one last takeaway that you want to make sure is just imparted on those who are watching this. I mean, there's so many. I mean, there are so many things I can think of, but what do you want? We'll start with, why don't we start with you, Lisa, go to Dan, and then Craig and Tony, and then I'll close us out.
Sure. I think we've said it numerous times. Communicate with your employees, share the positives, be honest also on everything that's going on so nothing comes as a surprise. And remember that you have to counteract all the negative news that's out there.
Good point. We didn't talk about that, but that's a really good point. Dan.
Yeah. I'm going to give two, one personal, one professional. Personally, if you're fortunate in a spot to be able to do something for someone that's not, do it. It's very simple because a lot of people need it. And then I think professionally, I would say, create a business plan 2.0 for the rest of 2020. That would be my advice. And it would be 2.0 would be within the context of what we talked about here, right? Within the context of COVID, both on the qualitative side, but also on the budget side, because things have changed and they're not going to snap back by the end of 2020. Who knows when they will. So you really have to rethink if you want to be, as strong, of a company as you can.
Very good. That's great. Craig?
Yeah, I guess I would add to that and say, nothing's either good or bad. And as bad as this is, and there are a lot of really horrible things happening and deaths and everything else, there are some really good things. We're being taught a lot of good things out of this whole thing. And what I'm worried about is hopefully it will end very quickly. Not as optimistic, but hopefully it will. And if everything just reverts back to the way it was in January, we've missed a huge, huge opportunity because it's teaching so many things. And I don't know if you're history buffs at all, but the Renaissance era, this huge awakening of humanity, the only reason that happened was because of the Black Plague. So there are some really good things that can come out of this thing. And I hope we don't lose sight of that. And we don't just revert back to, I just want to get back to the way it was in January.
Yeah.
That would be a shame.
That's very, very good point.
Let's go.
I think about like the good things that come out of bad. I remember one time doing a story and it was called the GE effect. And a lot of our entrepreneurial community and startup community came as a result of, unfortunately, GE layoffs.
Absolutely.
So same kind of, you just made me think of that a lot of good things have come out of a very trying time right now. So very good, Craig. Thank you. Tony?
I mean, I think the takeaway, obviously, tone at the top, communication. But I think it's something that it's what we do. We're as a software engineer, and really what we solve problems for our clients. We make sure it spots scenarios. So I think as a leader, you got to sit down and really lay out all the possibilities. And by the way, even those edge cases, you got to look at them all. Edge cases. You got to think about what happens if this happens. And I think that way, the odds are, and one of those things will happen 6 months from now, 2 years from now. I think that's very important that you got to be, you can't, again, I don't want to, some people maybe have their head in the sand. Well, guess what? Then now's the time to step up as a leader. So you got to come up with, and be honest with yourself. What are the possibilities? What are the things that could possibly happen? And what will you do about it? You got to be planning here. This is the time to shine. And if you got to be able to say, 10 things happen, how am I going to react? Who am I going to lean to? Who's going to be my advisor? Got to think this way. And those are tough ones because some of those things could be, holy cow. Some of those have a holy cow moment. So it's got to be your takeaway. In a couple of years, Craig, I trust you and I want that to be a different way. I want to go back and shake hands, by the way. I like hugging. I like that part. But maybe we don't shake hands anymore. I don't know. But there's certain things that we're humans. We got to be together. That social aspect. But the way we work, I think, whereas technology, we just opened up the floodgates. The shortage of people that we can't find people anymore. I think in 2 years from now, we're all going to have people work all over the world. And Lisa, hopefully you guys will figure out these laws and regulations. But that excites me. Because
I have to say I've been pleasantly surprised. We had all these fears when we first started the work from home test day that it wasn't going to work so well, that bandwidth was going to be a problem, especially after everybody started working from home. But we've been pleasantly surprised that, for the most part, few people had to work out a few issues with their home networks. But, things like this, we've been doing this while I have one daughter on a meeting for school and my husband on another call upstairs. So we have 3 video conferences happening in the house at the same time. And,
I was on a Zoom call a couple of weeks ago. Tom Nardacci had like 240 people. It was some crazy thing. And Melissa Mangini, the editor of the Business Review, was in one square, and her husband, who works at another company, was in another square. I go, Melissa, and I texted her, I private messaged her, through the chat. I go, Melissa, couldn't you guys both just share one square? And, but, it's the new normal. And I will say, just personally, there are a lot of things that I have really come to really embrace as well about this. I do talk, my colleagues and the marketing team, we talk to each other way more than, my office was right next to, John Daniels' office. We talk to each other way more now, and throughout the weekend. And I don't feel like a 5-minute phone call is interrupting me. If I can't take it, I can't take it. If he can't take it, he can't take it. It's okay. But I don't feel like he's invading. It's okay for me to have a quick call. So I do feel tighter in some ways. But anyway, I've learned so much from you. I knew I would. I know a lot of people. We're going to be releasing this on a Thursday. It either may be this coming Thursday, the 14th, or the 21st, which would have been our next BizLab Clarkson lunch. And so I'll do like a premiere video, and maybe even we did it last time. We'll do a little mini fundraiser with if people want to donate, they can donate to, it'll be Ellis Medicine. Anyway, I just always love talking to you. I know I could talk to you a lot longer, but I promise I try to keep it to an hour. I just want to thank you for your time and for your wisdom. And I think a lot of people will get a lot out of this. So Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Good seeing everybody. Thanks, Rick.
Nice.
All right. Have a good night. Take care.